Good afternoon. Welcome to the Chicago Money Show. We help you get informed, feel engaged, and have fun with your finances. I'm your host, Bridget Sullivan Mermel, and I own a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago. Today, we're going to be talking about small businesses, and I've got two successful business owners who each started their businesses from scratch. First, we've got Michael Ginsberg, owner of the 5gstore.com. And then we've got also along with that is Michael Cameron, who owns Uncommon Ground. They have two locations, one in Lakeview and one in Edgewater. I've actually started and run two businesses myself, so I'll probably be chiming in on this subject as well. Gentlemen, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.
This is one of my favorite topics. Mike Ginsberg, first, welcome. And why don't you tell me about your business? How do you help people?
Thanks, Bridget. Business is called 5G Store. We basically are an e-commerce e-tailer. So we ship stuff. The stuff that we ship are routers like that you would have in your house or business. But the difference is they have a SIM, like from Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T. You plug those SIMs into the router. And then what happens is if your internet goes down, we've all had that problem. What happens is the connection fails over to the cellular SIM, the connection that's in there. So people in your office don't know the internet goes down. So it's called a failover router. So it fails over to a secondary cellular connection when the main internet goes down. These days, everybody's connected with everything. So it's when your router internet goes down, you can't do anything. So this kind of helps a lot of people stay connected.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. And it's very specialized. So that'll be interesting to dive into. Mike Cameron, how about you? How do you describe your business to someone who hasn't been there?
Oh, my. Well, we're a restaurant, first and foremost. We have two locations. I'd say we're American comfort cuisine, definitely farm to table. Sort of started that movement here in Chicago all those years ago in 1991. And we're a community gathering, cultural meeting place for our two neighborhoods, live music and local artists on the wall, and brunch, lunch, and dinner every day. And a few years back, even added an organic brewery to our first location. So we've got quite a bit going on within the walls and under the roof of both of those places.
Great. So ultimately, I'm really curious for both of you how you measure success. Like, what are you really going for?
I think that, over the years, I think how we've measured success has changed. In the beginning, you're just trying to survive as a independent, owner, entrepreneur. And success is making sure that you're profitable. Those first few years were pretty lean and pretty difficult to do. As you grow and your profit margins grow, I think that we really gauge our success on what we have to offer our local communities, what a nice work environment we have for the employees that work with us, and a good quality of life both in the workplace and outside the workplace, a good work-life balance. And that includes us as the owners as well.
Mike Ginsberg, do you have anything to add to that?
So how do I measure success? So I'll be honest with you. I've never looked at profit as being number one. That's obviously important, because if you're not, profitable, how are you going to keep the doors open kind of mentality. My take on is how I measure it is how many happy employees and happy customers I have. You have those in large proportions, profits just kind of happen organically and naturally. So, always doing what's right for customers. And more importantly, your employees are your front face. They're the ones that are interacting with customers. So, taking care of them and making sure they're happy has always worked for me.
Interesting. So how did you get started, Michael Cameron? What about coffee?
Oh, yeah. So we started as a coffee house. I'd
Mhm.
been in the restaurant business previously, opening other operations for other restaurant operators. And we lived in the neighborhood and we saw that there was a need for a local community gathering place. So we found a storefront and maxed out our credit cards and, and dove in head first, and all of our you know mid 20s gusto, and just made it happen.
Yeah, interesting.
The rest is history.
Yeah, Mike Ginsberg, how did you get started? Because I don't think you started out with this specialty that you've got right now.
No, so the business I founded in 1988. So there wasn't any 5G, 4G, 3G. None of that.
I think I had dial-up. I was back on AOL.
Yeah, 300 baud modems at that time. So I actually started before I started the business. I was in retail sales, selling computers, and so what I would do is, and back then it was pretty easy. No spouse, kids, mortgage. It was very simple to kind of make a jump. And so I was actually evenings and weekends, my off hours, I was consulting, training, programming, helping people use these devices, these computers that they just bought. And it got to be, I was too busy. I couldn't take on any new clients. So I decided I think I got enough. I'll quit my day job and do this full time. And so I was actually doing programming, writing custom software from about 88 to about 2004. That was the passion, and completely did a 180 in where we are today, which also started kind of as a hobby, passion, interest, not necessarily, I'm going to switch businesses. It's just this new technology came out that I fell in love with, and started writing about it and blogging about it and educating people, and not monetizing it, just kind of something that I fell in love with, and it kind of grew from there.
Interesting. So how long, Michael Cameron, did it take you to feel like you were going to make it? Like, okay, credit cards are paid off from our early financing, and we're in the black, or we're making money, and we're going to make a go of this, and we can look at this as like this is working.
I don't know what's today. What time is it?
Still debating.
When you own your own business, and I'm sure Mike can preach to this as well, is that you're always a little nervous because it's all you. I think probably when we were able to finally own the building that we were in, and then also when we were able to expand and find another location and buy that building and renovate that and turn that into that second Uncommon Ground location, I think that's when we felt like, okay, we've made it to a certain level that we're actually able to do these things now, and to own our real estate, and then expanding into the brewery. So I think it took quite a bit. We're 30 years in, and I'd say I'm maybe in the last decade, I finally feel like, oh, okay, I guess we're still going to make it. You're not thinking like a lot of other restaurateurs where you're like, oh no, are we going to make it? So, and then a pandemic happens, and it's a whole different set of challenges.
Right. Mike Ginsberg, do you have anything to add to that?
I would say, so the business that I'm in now started more or less about 2005. So like the last 16 years. And I think there's always that in the back of your head, like, for real, are we going to make it? But I think in the last 5-6 years, there's definitely been more of that, push in the bank account, and just the consistent growing. I think since the last 16 years, every year except like 2009, we've increased by our revenue from last year. So we're always going in the right direction. And so I would say, as a business owner, as Michael said, it's always in the back of your mind, like, geez, who would have thought February 2020, everything's going great. Next month, the whole world's going to change. So there's always those curveballs that are thrown your way that as a business owner, you have to pivot and react quickly. And that's actually one of the things that I love doing, being calm in chaos. It's always going to happen. And in the old days, I would be in panic mode. Something bad happens, something out of the ordinary. I'm just very calm now because I know it will be okay. You just got to breathe, think it through, and act quickly. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about how you've pivoted during COVID? Like, so, and it's interesting because both of your industries, one, the restaurant industry has taken a huge hit during COVID, and the computer industry has probably benefit from it. What's been your experience, Michael Cameron?
Well, I think Michael touched on this, February 2020, we looked at January, we looked at February, we're like, wow, this is going to be an amazing year for us. We were on track to have like a record year of the last decade easily. I couldn't believe it. And a lot of Cubs are doing well. There's going to be a bunch of concerts at Wrigley Field, Edgewater neighborhoods kicking butt, Loyola Ramblers are winning championships, so I've got these two neighborhoods where I'm like, this is amazing. And then shut down, we went from like 100 miles an hour to 0. And I think that, that was crazy. So the early days of that were, okay, both of my businesses are shut down. It's not like I have an unlimited supply of cash to sit around and pay the mortgages of both of my buildings and pay my tax payments and that. So immediate panic mode goes in, and you learn to be a survivor very quickly. I made a lot of phone calls to, like, within hours to my bankers, to say, hey, what are we going to do here? What's going on? And as the local government and the federal government started stepping up, and we started seeing that there would be some help, that gives you a little peace of mind. But I'm in a business where when I was personally running the restaurant, I was working like up to 80 hours a week, bouncing between two locations, opening a brewery, going nuts.
Right.
And then when you go to nothing, it kind of takes away who you are and your whole identity, and it forces you to kind of look at like, okay, who am I? And not to be too abstract, but it was like, okay, let's use this opportunity to assess ourselves, both business and personally, and what changes do we want to make? Because if we're allowed to or able to at this moment in time, like, if you can survive, you can pretty much reinvent in whatever direction that you want to reinvent. And I think that gave us the opportunity to allow us to make some pretty dramatic changes at both operations, because we were closed. So it's like reopening two new businesses from scratch. So we looked at like, okay, what can we change now, and how we can change, and how can we move forward and be even better than we were before, because we've got to make a big bang to get people to come back and order and feel comfortable. And it was a huge challenge, the largest challenge of my entire life and career in this industry, definitely by far.
That's really interesting too, and I appreciate you bringing up how your identity is tied to your business. Like, I don't think that other people that don't have their own business might not think that about starting a business. It's like your identity, like who you are, ends up becoming very intertwined with your business. So, Michael Ginsberg, what about you? COVID, how have you pivoted?
So our business has always been virtual. We've always had virtual employees, some 14 years, 13 years. So the virtual thing wasn't new to us. We were doing it for a while. We had a team of people, about 10 that were here in our building. That and I started January 31st was the date that it started showing up on my radar. Like, what the hell's going on in the world? And started kind of getting ready and acquiring equipment and getting ready. So March 15th or whatever, sending all a group of 10 people home. We had all this equipment. I had all the backpacks ready to go. We sent everybody home. Back then, I was ready for no business, shutting down for maybe I remember that time it was like 2 weeks, then it was like a month, and so I was ready to shut down for like maybe a couple weeks or a month or two. And just, we were financially strong. So I'm thinking, okay, we'll use this time. We'll retrain everybody. We'll spend time learning new things and cross training, and we'll just come out of this way stronger. So, but in our business, connectivity products, e-commerce, shipping stuff. Like those are two gigantic things with the pandemic. Everybody wants stuff shipped, and keeping your business connected, your virtual employees connected. So we were the opposite. We saw a big bump. We never had that lull. I think we were in three essential categories for businesses. So we stayed open. We really did is send a group of people home virtually. Didn't miss a beat. Things kept going. We actually had in 2020 our best year ever. But it was, if you remember, it was just such a different time back then. Very scary. Didn't know what was going around the corner, what's going to happen. But again, as Michael said, being a small business owner, it's acting quickly as fast as you can. That's how you stay ahead of the curve. And who would have thought where we are now? But there'll be another one down the road. You just got to kind of pivot as fast as you can and be smart.
Yeah, it's interesting for me as a business owner. So I have a financial planning practice, and we do taxes for clients. And so it was during tax season, and the market went down by 30%, and everybody was stressed out. And so we were trying to do all these things at once, and we're having some employee turnover at the same time. So it was very stressful, but it helped me just focus on the next thing. Like, what can I do today? Okay, what am I doing today? What's really important? What can I not do? So it was, in some ways it was very stressful, but then in other ways to Michael Cameron's point, it helps you figure out what's going to stay and what's going to go. Use this opportunity to reinvent yourself if you want to. How have you handled like shortages and supply chain issues? It seems like both of you would have those. Michael Cameron, you can go first.
It's a scary thing. There's a lot going on in the world, right? So, we're talking pandemic, we're talking drought, water shortage in the West Coast, trying to get, we're a farm to table restaurant and with a lot of organic and local and sustainable products. So fortunately, we source a lot of our products very close to home. We're not importing anything that we don't necessarily have to import. So the supply chain at least is close to home. I think for us, the supply chain was, there was a moment when one of our major distributors, all of their truck drivers walked out one day and went on strike. And I got a phone call from them saying, hey, you're not going to get any your deliveries, and we may not ever deliver to you again. And because we're going to so dramatically decrease who we're delivering to. Fortunately, that was a very short-lived issue, but we had to pivot really, really quickly. I think we're seeing a supply chain problem more now than we had earlier in the pandemic, and it's interesting to see. And obviously, prices are going up, that whole supply and demand thing, right? So we're just keeping an eye on it, literally day to day, week to week, seeing if we need to remove items from menus, if we need to look for other suppliers for certain items to make sure that we can keep our shelves stocked and keep people fed, really. And there was even liquor shortages where, distilleries or whatever are going, hey, we don't have enough people, to keep up with the demand, like what Michael was saying earlier. Some businesses really spiked. I think that's one of them that really, really spiked. And I'll tell you what, you own your own brewery. I stopped serving anybody else's beer other than ours because it's right there at our own facility. So at least I had 12 taps full all the time at both restaurants, so we could keep filling howlers and growlers when people were doing pickup and carry out and delivery. And then now we're keeping up no problem with people coming into the restaurant. But yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge. I'm not feeling like we're totally over the supply chain shortages. Like I said, we're keeping an eye on it all the time and pivoting and evolving as we need to make those necessary changes.
And Mike Ginsberg, how about you?
So I actually agree. So in 2020, supply issues were non-existent. Everything was beautiful. maybe the middle of this year, kind of felt like there was going to be some problems going on. So what we actually did to help, we started buying more, doubled our inventory that we were holding because we wanted to kind of weather any storm. And that has actually helped. We also got a little lucky where, one of our vendors that has had nothing to ship for like 3 months, out another 2 months, they're 3% of our sales. So it's not like a big deal. And the other thing we're doing moving forward is a couple months ago, we started onboarding some new vendors that are in the space with the sole reason of more options. These guys are out, these guys are out. Well, maybe these guys. So we're kind of growing in that way. So it's really planning and crossing your fingers.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So let's move to a different topic that is just kind of small business lifestyle. Michael Cameron, how does your spouse fit into your business? Actually, I know you started your business with your spouse.
Yeah. So my wife, Helen, and I started Uncommon Ground together. And, the longer you're in, especially this type of business, if I was working for some other company at over 30 years, I'd be like, okay, where's my watch? Where's my pension? It's time to, check out. And so, we work on things together. In the early days, it was divide and conquer. We quickly realized what each of our strengths and weaknesses were. And then we just divided those duties up and said, all right, well, you're better at this and I'm better at that. And let's go forward. And the fact that we've been married for 33 years and we've owned a business together for 30 of those years and that we still really like each other, I think is a great, accomplishment. And I think it's because before we even started dating, we were friends. And then we started dating, we got married, and we stayed really good friends. And so running a business together, we just really worked well together. I started in the back of the house and I moved very quickly in my career to the front of the house. And she started in the front of the house and moved quickly into the back of the house for, she went to school for chemical engineering. She became the chef of both of our restaurants. So that divide and conquer thing came very naturally to us as far as like who did what better. And we never really had any arguments or, any disagreements on it. Just like I said, it just flowed naturally. And as we get older and doing this longer, Helen has moved out of operations pretty much entirely. We all call her our CFO now. She's in charge of just the finances and balancing the books and making sure that she prints my P&Ls for all of my managers at the restaurants. And I am sort of director of operations now. So I'm the voice, the face, the person that checks in at both restaurants and the brewery all the time. And we made that move consciously. And I think that the older you get, the more you start thinking about that exit strategy. One of us needed to sort of step away a little bit to give the other one permission to maybe join, for me to join her a little bit more outside of work than being at work all the time. And that's really benefited our peace of mind and our quality of life. And I think that we have these conversations all the time. It's like, hey, we joke about it. We opened our own restaurant back in the day so that we could be our own boss and take our vacations whenever we want. Right. And we just laughed at that for like a decade. Like, hey, we still haven't taken a vacation together, So I think that, it's where we are right now is probably one of the best places we've been as a couple, and as a couple that owns buildings and businesses together, that we feel like we finally are getting, after 30 years, to that quality of life, to have life outside of work as well as within work.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask another question, Mike Ginsberg, about succession planning. So like, how do you, when you're starting a business, it seems counterintuitive, but I know as a business owner, it makes sense to be thinking about, okay, how is this going to end up? Start with the end in mind is what they call it in 7 Habits. Like, okay, assume that I'm going to build something that has value, and it's hard to start a business. So somebody else is going to want to buy it so that they don't have to go through this process, which can be hard to imagine when you're starting a business that somebody else might want to buy it. But did you think that way at the beginning, or what's your advice in that realm?
So, when you're doing the daily grind and you're just kind of working and either putting out fires or planning for the business's future and driving the ship and doing all those kinds of things, me personally, that's not anything that I actually ever even think about. I mean, obviously I have twin daughters that they're 26 years old, and I've always thought, well, down the road, I mean, previously, well, maybe they'll go and they'll take over, but they got their own careers. One's a biomedical engineer, one's a occupational therapist. They got their own thing. They don't want anything to do with this. So it's not going to be handed down to anybody in my family. So, I guess not a lot of thought, it's just like kind of too busy on the day to day, but I'll take a piece of the other question you asked. So my wife is also, Julia, very involved in the business, completely different background. When we started this new road that we did in 2005, she kind of helped. She took off a couple of years. She's really more of a corporate finance, big corporation kind of person. I'm kind of wild and loose and never worked for corporations. So we're very different. And she went back to corporate. She then quit that job about 5 years ago and now has been helping full time. But all throughout, you spend a lot of time with them at work, out of work. You really got to like the person or it ain't going to work. And, but we exercise every morning. We go walking for 3 miles. We basically use that time just to brainstorm and talk things through. So it's great having somebody there that, as other Michael said, that you like, and that kind of helps. But on the back to your question, if you start something and your whole goal is how am I going to get out? Like, I don't know. That's not my way of thinking.
Right.
Eventually I'll probably have to think more about that. But right now I'm having too much fun.
Cool. Awesome. So we're going to wrap this up. So let's have a little lightning round here. Michael Cameron, what's the biggest thing you've learned by owning and operating your own business?
Oh my God. When you think that you've seen or heard or experienced everything, every day is a surprise. So always keep an open mind, stay patient, stay kind, stay compassionate. I'm in the hospitality industry, stay hospitable, right? And when you stop liking what you do, stop doing it. I think that, that's the advice I give my employees. I'm like, look, if this isn't a prison sentence, you're not chained here. If you don't like this, go do something else. I mean, it's a job like anything. You got to be happy. I don't want unhappy people around me. If I stop liking my job, if I don't like what I'm doing, I'm going to go do something else. I love my job, so I'm going to keep doing what I do.
That's interesting. And Mike Ginsberg, biggest thing you've learned, 1 minute.
100% agree with Michael. You find your passion and just go for it. If it's a job, if it's a business, like find something you would do anyways, even if you weren't getting paid. And that's what you should be doing. From a business owner, hire people smarter than you, hire people and companies to do things that you don't want to do. Be open to ideas and change, and think big, act small.
Interesting. Mike Ginsberg and Michael Cameron, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today.
Our pleasure.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much, Bridget.
And my name is Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I own a family financial planning firm. If you've got questions on this episode or for future episodes, please email us. We're at ask@chicagomoneyshow.com. Thanks for watching.